Alright, so today I'm doing a podcast review on the movie The Shawshank Redemption. So, to start with some background knowledge of The Shawshank Redemption, it was actually a movie created off of the short novel by Stephen King entitled Rita Hayworth and The Shawshank Redemption. It later was turned into a movie in about, I believe, 1975. And when it hit the stores, it wasn't as popular as it hoped to be, but over time it grew to be one of America's classic and a film loved by most Americans. So to start off with, The Shawshank Redemption is a movie titled with the main character known as Andy Dufresne, and he is a banker in the state of Maine. Now, what happens in the first part of the movie is he is caught as a murderer because his wife was cheating on him with another guy, and he had a revolver, and he was sentenced to he was supposed to be sentenced to 2 life sentences in jail, which obviously you can't, there's no death penalty in Maine, so he was sentenced to instead 2 life sentences in the Shawshank Redemption prison. So the Shawshank Redemption movie is a great movie, as it says, and when he first arrives there, he is kind of a quiet person, quiet but also very observant, and the first person he meets there is a person named Ellis Red, but he also goes by Red, and these 2 characters are especially the biggest reason for the success this movie had. And Andy and Red are different characters, but the movie, the other characters have given up on trying to go to the outside world. So this movie has a lot of themes built upon into it, and one of the most predominant themes in it are that of hope, because it's the hope that these people, that Andy, that Ellis Redding, that all these characters are able to one day be freed. This movie also has a lot of other themes as well as rehabilitation and kind of like what the world sees as a person named... It was a person named Brooks was sentenced for 50 years, 1905 to 1955, and he was released from Shawshank prison in 1955. That's over 50 years of time that's went by since he was in prison, and the world is not the same as he knew it. He tried going to life. He tried living a normal life and actually worked in a grocery store and lived in a motel for a while. But he was fed up with a world that he couldn't understand, and he took his life by hanging in the motel. So what do you guys think of this so far as in the themes and the characters?
Well, previously watching the movie, I have to say it's probably my favorite, if not one of my favorites of all time. I mean, Stephen King. He is a master in the art of making stories and delivering them beautifully. This movie is nothing different. It's excellent in almost every sense. There's so much symbolism and metaphors just hiding right under our noses. I mean, it would take too long to go into every piece of cinematic masterpiece in this movie. So I'll hand it off to Jake.
So Jacob, what do you think of this?
Following up to what Mr. Queer said, well, first off, I think Shawshank has a lot of themes in it. I think that's what makes it one of the best movies of all time. I think the idea of hope and rehabilitation is probably one of the best themes. And I think Morgan Freeman, I forget the character he plays, but he had a speech.
Plays Red.
What? Anyway, it doesn't matter. He had a speech in the movie where he was he's like, were you rehabilitated? He says, he gave some speech about the world outside of prison, and I just think it's a great movie.
Yeah, so from the looks of it, in the sheer scope, it seems like a basic prison movie, but it's really not. In fact, it's not actually the complete opposite of a prison movie, because it's not based on the fact of these people going to prison. It's the character development inside the prison and how each of it affects their psychological aspect. Because going into a prison for your whole life, as Andy was in there for about 35 years, that takes a toll on your mental state and also your physical state. As they were doing hard labor, And on top of that, getting brutally raped and beat by a bunch of men all the time can definitely take a toll on your mental state. But as the same thing with the theme of hope, Andy didn't give up despite having all these things happen to him and being framed for murder, which did not happen. It was actually the person that his wife was cheating on that murdered her. And to be framed and sent to a prison for this, it takes a toll on someone. But Andy Dufresne stayed true to himself, and instead of giving up like Brooks did and hanging himself, Andy fought for a way to live free and to escape Shawshank Redemption. And in the end, he actually ended up doing it. And alongside with that, his best friend that he met there, Red, was also released from prison. But he didn't obviously not escape. So, along with great characters and amazing plot, it's no surprise that Shawshank would also have great pacing and development. So
Before you continue, can I touch some real quick?
Sure, Landry.
Alright, there's one thing that I just really want to talk about, and that's just the whole Red's parole hearings. He has, I think, 2 or 3 throughout the whole movie. The first 2, he's like extremely respectful, and he's like, you know, I think I've been changed. This prison's really changed me. I think I'm going to be a better person for it. And then I'll give him parole. And then come the third one, he's like, you know what? Screw it. Forget the system. And he goes out and he says, this thing is terrible. You know, I don't care if you give me parole because the life that I have now, I mean, that's the life that you've given me. And he just tells him exactly how it is. And because of that, he is granted parole and his freedom. I mean, that whole scene, those scenes put together is just, I think it's just a beautiful scene.
Following up to what Landry said, that was actually the scene I was referring to where he was talking about what rehabilitation means and how that he has been in the prison for so long that this is his life. And when he goes out, nothing's the same. The world's completely changed. And I remember seeing a video, not on this movie, just on a man who was locked up for a crime he did not commit for 50 years. He comes out, people have earbuds in, and he's just completely shocked. I think with that theme of being in a prison for so long, not knowing how the world is changing, how technology advances, I think when he comes out, it just really shows how vast the world is and how much it changes when you're enclosed in confinement. I think that was really neat.
Yeah, so moving along from the side of plot and themes, I want to also touch on the pacing and development. The Shawshank Redemption is a long movie, and the approximate time is 2 hours and 22 minutes. Now, a lot of people would sit here and complain about the time because as sometimes movies like to stretch the time, but as you stretch the time, the movie gets more drawn out and boring. But the thing about Shawshank is this time was meant for the development of the characters. If this movie was any shorter, let's say an hour and 45, the pace, the character development, and what you feel for the characters wouldn't hit you as hard as it was if it was 2 hours and 20 minutes. And I think that's what makes Shawshank Redemption great, is because of this long pacing, that it takes these time. Because when you're introduced with a whole cast of characters, you can't just make these characters appeal to you in a short span of time, which is why the creator of the movie, the director, makes it longer, approximately 2 hours and 20. So it's crucial to the story development, and it's also crucial to the character development. On top of that, making the characters feel more fleshed out and more, as you could say, human. Now, the film also had a lot of great and amazing features, but the one key feature, I think it was, is because of the themes. As I touched on it a little bit earlier, the theme of hope, but there's a lot of other themes of how a character goes about achieving freedom. And for some characters like Brooke, freedom lived inside the walls. For Brooks, freedom was not as such as outside the walls, because he was content with his life as the librarian, watching over the library, and also, having his birds. He was content with the life out there. When he was set out there, in a sense he was free, but for his personality, his freedom lay inside those thick, cold walls. But for people like Andy and Brooke, his freedom was outside these walls. He wanted to get out there the moment he was there, and just achieving that helped this movie attain the reputation it did, with all these amazing themes and metaphors just hidden inside this with all the characters. Red as such is one of the greatest characters, because he almost portrays a message of a helping hand. Even when he first got there, Red kind of looked at Andy as, he seems valuable and smart, but as a sense, Red was the helping hand that caused Andy to not give up on hope. Because if Red wasn't there, Andy would have no way to get access to the stuff he had. And I think that's one of the most predominant things in this movie, is Red helped Andy so much. And they both help each other throughout this movie. That's almost as, it's just a really great friendship. And it's a friendship built upon years and years. It wasn't just an aspect of 5 years. It was a time span of over 35 years as Andy was in prison for. So I want to hear your opinions, Landry, on this.
Man, where do I begin? I think, honestly, one thing I also forgot to touch on was the character development of just the person, Brooks. Like, the old man in the movie, the white old dude who, eventually gets released. His development, I mean, it just shows that if someone is away for as long as he was, and he was away for like 50-something years, he was away for a long time, and he finally gets out, and the only thing he knows is prison. It's the only thing he can cope with. He can't cope with the real world. He doesn't understand how it works anymore. He's been there so long that he doesn't even remember how the world works. He doesn't understand freedom. And I mean, that just affects his life so much that you're like, there's nothing I can do. There's only one alternative, and he hung himself in his motel. Just that scene is so moving. It's just expertly crafted.
Well, I think adding on to what he said, I think this is just many examples of people being mis-sentenced for many years, and when they come out, they've been so attached to this confinement of prison that the world is scary, it's unknown, it's almost like they're a baby trying to find their way in the world, but they're not. They've lived after life in a prison, in a confinement. So I think when they get out in the real world, they don't know anything, so they just feel dependent on the institution, which is the prison.
Yeah, I think that's why Shawshank stands out from other simple prison movies, because it's not just a basic prison movie. It's a movie built upon the characters' bonds and more of the mental aspects and the toll it takes on these characters. So, in conclusion, I think Shawshank is a fantastic movie, and if I were to put it I put it definitely in one of my top 3. The movie brings amazing and unforgettable characters and an absolutely stunning story, great pacing throughout the movie, and themes and messages that can influence the audience. But however, I love this movie as much as I say, but I can also stress that there is a couple things I dislike. One thing in particular is the pacing for the ending. I felt that the ending was rushed. As much as the time expanded it and it builds up these great bonds, I feel like that little 20-minute mark of the ending just felt a little too rushed, of him just immediately getting out and then he immediately goes and finds Red. I just felt like that ending just it could have been more developed at the end of the movie, because if it was a little longer, I just felt like it would have more of an impact. And but there were also things that I did like. I love the movie because of the underlying themes that this movie gave off. Every character felt so fresh, fleshed out, and developed, and the character development in this movie was also amazing. So if I were to give this movie, The Shawshank Redemption, a grade, and compared to every other movie I've seen, I would give it an A-. The movie was absolutely fantastic, and not a lot of movies have left such an impact on me, but no movies are perfect, and an A- is well worth the credit of this movie. Thank you for watching this podcast.